Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. William Lee. I am the president and medical director of the nonprofit Angiogenesis Foundation. So today we're going to talk about some recent research work, exciting work that was just presented at the American Society of Nutrition in Orlando. And with me is my colleague, Dr. Mélanie Guirette, who has her PhD in nutrition from the Friedman School of Nutrition. She works at the foundation and has led and presented the research study. And let me explain a little bit first about what this study was intended to do. The foundation is very, very committed to understanding how food can be used to improve human and animal health. And we are aware from the work we've done in the past that not all food was created equal. And in fact, although we recognize that plant-based foods are much better than most animal proteins, and certainly better than ultra-processed foods, we began thinking when it comes to plants, perhaps not all plants were created equal either. So one question is, what is the impact of the growing conditions that our food grows in? So we go to the grocery store, we go to the produce section, we start loading up our cart with various fruits and vegetables. Well, how do we know which foods contain more healthy micronutrients than others? And that's actually the question that the Angiogenesis Foundation was diving into. We partnered with a really amazing group called the Chef's Garden in Huron, Ohio. Dr. Guirette and I were introduced to the Chef's Garden late last year by one of our board members, Rachel Ray. And we had this amazing day sampling and tasting incredible flavored foods that came right out of the garden. And then they were also prepared into foods that we enjoyed as well. So that led us to scratch our heads and basically say, is there a way that we can actually study the potency in the micronutrients of the foods? Do these foods that are grown in very specific conditions, do they have more of the good stuff and less of the bad stuff? And that's actually what we set out to study. So, Dr. Guirette, what did the study actually find?
Thank you, Dr. Lee. Yeah, so as you mentioned, we visited this farm, Chef's Garden in Ohio, and they're actually a regenerative agricultural farm. So they focus on regenerative agriculture, which in its core really focuses on improving and maintaining soil health. And so the principles that they carry out to be able to maintain soil health are things like minimizing tillage, that's to protect the soil's complex microenvironment, keeping the soils covered with plants or crop residues to kind of shield the soils from the elements, rain, frost, or too much sunlight. Other practices also include rotating and grazing animals so that the pastures have time to rest and regenerate. And then also planting a diverse mix of crops to avoid monocultures. And all of these practices are in an effort to keep the soil biodiversity, the soil health, and hopefully out of the healthy soil, build a healthy plant, which could potentially then lead to healthy humans if they're consuming these plants. And I say potentially because that link, a healthy soil to a healthy plant to a healthy human may seem logical, but it's been very much understudied in peer-reviewed research in the scientific community. And so that's where we came in to collaborate with the Chef's Garden to be able to ask those questions, answer those questions. Yeah, so for vitamin C, we actually found that 15 regeneratively grown vegetables were significantly higher in vitamin C compared to the conventional. We found vegetables such as arugula, radish, spinach, and squash, all very, commonly consumed in the US. Yeah, so for example, arugula was 5 times higher in vitamin C than the conventional arugula. Radish was 3 times higher, so very substantial levels.
So if you're going to actually make a salad with arugula and radish, and you had a choice between conventional versus this type of vegetable that we were able to study, you can see you can get more vitamin C using the exact same ingredients, but the differences of having more potent foods was based on their growing conditions.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then speaking of making a salad, for calcium, for example, the calcium levels in kale actually varied depending on the type of kale that we're looking at, but they were all much higher than conventional. And they were between 1.6 and 3 times higher in calcium compared to conventional kale.
Calcium, we know, is really important for bone health, as an example, But you're saying that the results from our research showed higher levels of calcium in the regeneratively grown kale.
Right. Yeah. Kale along with 37 other vegetables. So that was very interesting. And then finally for sodium, we found these findings actually particularly striking because out of the 109 vegetables we focused on for sodium, 80 were actually substantially lower in sodium for the regeneratively grown vegetables compared to the conventional. So that's about 70% of the vegetables were actually lower in sodium.
So low sodium is something that's desirable. So the average person going out to buy a can of soup, most people are now looking for the low sodium version, right? If you go to a restaurant and you want to have a heart healthier meal, you ask the waiter to tell the kitchen you'd like to actually have a low sodium version. So because, we eat way too much salt, actually most countries, but particularly in America, high salt increases blood pressure, higher blood pressure increases your rate of stroke and cardiovascular disease. It puts a big burden on your heart. And so what's surprising to me is that for the same vegetable, and you could actually get lower sodium. So what vegetables had lower sodium?
Yeah, so 80 vegetables were lower in sodium. So not only a high amount of vegetables, but also a much lower. So for example, regeneratively grown Swiss chard was 58% lower in sodium than its conventional counterpart. Red beets were 79% lower as well. And then conventional spinach was has 23 times the sodium load than a regeneratively grown spinach.
23 times lower was the regenerative one.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So I love Swiss chard. You wash it up, cut it up, saute in a little extra virgin olive oil with a little bit of garlic. You can have a really delicious, fresh, low sodium dish. Don't add any salt yourself and let Mother Nature lower the sodium for you. Beets, great for cardiovascular health as well because it causes our body to produce nitric oxide, which lowers blood pressure. So you want to actually get a little more mileage out of that. Our research suggests that at least for these versions that we studied, you can actually get the beet to be also low sodium. And then spinach was 23 times lower. I love spinach. One of my favorite dishes that I like to make is spinach with a little bit of extra virgin olive oil, garlic. I like to actually add some toasted pine nuts, not salted, and then add a small amount of golden raisins into it. It's a Spanish dish I learned how to make. Put a little splash of white wine, and it's an amazing, delicious spinach dish. Spinach, like beets, can actually lower blood pressure by helping your body to actually create nitric oxide as well. And so I'm blown away by the fact that for the same foods grown in a particular way, meaning regeneratively grown, you can actually get less of the bad stuff, which is sodium, for the same foods. I mean, it's like you get the high sodium or regular sodium versus the low sodium version. Low sodium, we found you can get regeneratively. And for the good stuff, calcium, we're always telling people to actually, make sure you have enough calcium to build strong bones, particularly for aging. Very, very important. Calcium's a cofactor for a lot of chemical reactions in your body as well. That you can actually choose the same vegetables that actually have naturally higher levels of calcium. And then vitamin C, I used to always think about vitamin C as, something you'd find in oranges or orange juice, but it turns out a lot of foods actually have vitamin C. Depending on the growing condition, at least this study showed that regeneratively farmed vegetables can actually have substantially higher levels of ascorbic acid or vitamin C. Vitamin C, by the way, builds collagen. You want to have good joints. You want to have good skin. Vitamin C is very important. Vitamin C is also important for your gums. If you remember, like that old story about scurvy, the pirates on the high seas didn't have enough fruits and vegetables, so their gums their teeth fell out because their gums couldn't hold them. They had collagen deficiency. You need collagen to hold your teeth in your mouth. And here's a way of actually getting vitamin C into your body at a higher level. I think the health relevance, anything else you want to mention? You're a registered dietitian. What would you tell? Obviously this is research, so we can't generalize completely.
Yeah.
But from the type of results that we found, what kinds of insights could we provide somebody who's curious about whether or not growing conditions matter, and if they had a choice between different types of vegetables grown under different conditions, what should they choose?
Yeah, you bring up an important point there, Dr. Lee, because yes, as a dietitian, I would definitely recommend increasing your levels of vegetables and fruit intake, right? No matter what the source. We have a big problem in this country of not eating enough vegetables. So I hope that these results don't deter anyone from actually eating vegetables because they don't know where they're being grown from. But if you are a person that regularly consumes vegetables and is able to start looking at where your vegetables are coming from, this kind of study does push towards having a more conscious decision-making process of trying to pick out, okay, where did this vegetable grow from? What farming practices were used? And this overall research does seem to be promoting those initial links that we were testing, right? A healthy soil leading to a healthy plant, potentially to a healthy human.
Yeah, and I would echo that as a physician, as a medical doctor, talking to people about better ways to use diet to improve their health and to fight disease. It's very clear, you want to have these good micronutrients at higher levels from plant-based foods. The dietary fiber, by the way, also, which is very powerful for your gut microbiome, is really important. And, it just shows you that making good conscious choices, perhaps something that's good for the planet, regenerative growing, is also better for the plant and then also better for humans as well. And that's really why the Angiogenesis Foundation did this pilot study. Now, I want to dive a little bit, I would say one little more thing about some of these micronutrients, because as a vascular biologist, somebody who's studied blood vessels, I can tell you that ascorbic acid, vitamin C, is necessary for blood vessel health because blood vessels don't float in your body. They are actually placed into your skin, your muscles, your organs, and they're anchored in place by connective tissue, which you need vitamin C in order to be able to get those roots to grow, good blood vessel roots to actually stay there. So you want to have good blood flow, good circulation. You definitely need to have good amounts of vitamin C. The other thing is that if you have a cut and you have a wound, you need vitamin C to heal your wound. The vitamin C actually will promote better wound healing, actually, and prevent the wrong kind of healing or delayed healing or leading to bad scar formation as well. Vitamin C is actually very important for that. And then finally, and this might be a little bit of a surprise to some people, but researchers looking at how vitamin C can affect cancer. Now, there's been a urban legend that's gone on for years that high levels of vitamin C are anti-cancer. And, there were some skeptics about it. Actually, it looks like it's holding true that people who have a higher intake of vitamin C foods actually do have lower risk for developing some forms of cancer. How could that be? Well, number one, vitamin C is anti-inflammatory, which actually makes a lot of sense, lower inflammation. A lot of the foods containing vitamin C, and which were some of the foods that were in our study that were vitamin C containing foods? You said arugula?
Radish, spinach, squash.
Great. So these are foods that also contain dietary fiber. So you get the vitamin C, you get dietary fiber that also contributes to lowering inflammation. Cancer and tumors are able to trigger angiogenesis. They hijack blood vessels to grow and feed themselves when there's a lot of inflammation around. So actually putting that fire out can have an anti-angiogenic or cancer-starving effect, which is also beneficial for prevention of cancer and also useful for healing and recovering from cancer. And then one other thing about vitamin C, a lot of people don't realize, but it's so important. Vitamin C is an antioxidant. And I can tell you as a researcher, I used to poo-poo this word antioxidant because it means almost nothing because it's used so often. However, if you are being treated for a disease like cancer with chemotherapy, which actually causes a huge amount of oxidative stress, the chemo burning through your veins, actually to kill that cancer also causes a huge amount of damage in other cells in your body, which is why we have side effects. Vitamin C can help to counter and neutralize some of that damage. And so one approach to minimizing side effects from chemotherapy is to actually get vitamin C infusions or take vitamin C supplements or eat any more citrus. And here is an example of how foods and medicine, not just foods as medicine, but foods and medicine can actually make a difference to ameliorate side effects, improve healing, and also even help medicines counter the development of disease, in this case, particular case, cancer. And by the way, these are all the reasons why the Angiogenesis Foundation is doing this. We have a very, very specific point of view, which is that our circulation is a common denominator of health and disease. that by eating foods that can support our circulation, we're actually able to improve our overall health potential. And the type of research that you just presented, Dr. Guirette, actually tells us that we want more of the good stuff can be heavily influenced by the growing conditions of the plant. And this is the beginning of a much larger series of studies that we want to accomplish. And thank you for presenting the work. I know that you had a wonderful reception at the American Society of Nutrition recently. And when we're ready, I'm sure you will be taking the lead in writing this up for a paper to be published.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed hearing about some of the research for the Angiogenesis Foundation. We're going to continue to do this. When we're doing some research and we have something new to present, we'll talk about it. When there's a commentary that we want to make where we can talk about food and health, Dr. Guirette and I'll pop back on and try to bring you some perspectives on things. And there's so much information that is important for us to share, because when it comes to food and your health, what we communicate about food can have immediacy, meaning that it's something you can put into action right away in your life. So thanks very much for watching. And by the way, if you like this video, make sure you hit like and subscribe. Hey, if you like that video, then you're gonna love this one. Check it out.